You served with honor. Gambling addiction doesn't get to rewrite your story. Kindbridge Behavioral Health is here to help with confidential, judgment-free support tailored for veterans and military service members right when you need it. Check out kindbridge.com/appointments and start reclaiming your life. This is the Fall In Podcast. We talk about gambling addiction, gambling recovery, responsible gambling with a heavy emphasis on military service members, veterans, and first responders. My name is Dave. I'm an 11-year veteran of the United States Army and also in recovery for a gambling addiction. Before I get into the topic, I want to introduce, we have two guests on today. The first is with the Council on Compulsive Gambling of Pennsylvania. In fact, he's the executive director. His name is Josh Ercole. Hi, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for being on. Really appreciate it. And also with us today, Samantha Cossman, who works with military service members and families throughout the state and is also running the Pennsylvania statewide coalition on problem gambling among military service members, veterans, and their families. Hi, Samantha. How are you?
Doing well, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Good. So, can you tell me a little bit? Let's start with you, Samantha. Tell me a little bit about, if you can, your background and kind of, in general, you work with military service members and what brought you here? What brought you to learning about problem gambling among service members?
Yeah, so as you said, I work specifically in the central part of Pennsylvania, typically with veterans, their families, their caregivers, survivors. We do also bleed over into a little bit of work with active duty service members. But actually, I had gotten to meet Josh through another coalition that was happening in the northern tier of the state, and started hearing more about problem gambling. And it's something that I just was not educated on, and I did not have the understanding of how it affects those who have military service and their families. So we were chit-chatting, and he was commenting that it would be great if we could somehow get people from a broader section of the state involved. So we put out our feelers. We typically tend to work more so with advocates and professionals who are doing the frontline work with service members, veterans, and their families. We know a lot of them who are working day in and day out with military veterans who do live with this issue and who are seeking support to move beyond it. So just happy to be working with you two. You make facilitating or enabling the coalition very easy and very fun. So I'm happy that we can do it together.
Yeah, and honored and pleased to be able to work with you at the same time because obviously you've become very passionate about what you do with this coalition, and and I'm so thrilled to see the work that you're doing. So tell us a little bit about the coalition itself. What is it designed to do? What are we trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, so basically resource awareness and networking. The Council on Compulsive Gambling for Pennsylvania just has so much education and so many resources that it can put out there. What we're trying to do through this coalition is to get together the advocates, as I said just a bit ago, who are touching veterans and their family members and service members day in and day out, and connect them up to that information and that education, and kind of do the collective brainstorm of how can we get that information out into the public easier, so that when someone within the service member, veteran, and family population is not necessarily working one-on-one with one of the advocates or professionals that we may all know, but they're simply popping into a gas station or going to, a supermarket or a library, kind of discussing those ways that we can help get information that there are resources out there to help those who are living with problem gambling. So really that resource awareness and networking. I don't really know if you want to know, but the coalition meets on a quarterly basis. And because we are complementing folks from across the Commonwealth, we meet virtually. We do it by Microsoft Teams, and we hold those meetings on the first Tuesday of January, April, July, and October from 10 in the morning to 11:30. I think after the first meeting, we found that there was a lot of really good information to share, and 1 hour just was not going to cut it. So we bumped it out to 90 minutes. And that's because you guys are just such a wealth of knowledge. It is incredible, the subject matter expertise and the passion that both of you bring to the table. So
I very much appreciate that. And honestly, we had just had a discussion about in our last meeting as to whether quarterly was too much and we needed to back off. And to a person, everybody agreed, no, we need to keep it quarterly. We need to keep contact and keep staying in touch because there's so much good information that's being brought forward from everyone, really. A lot of good ideas and good things are brought up. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but before I do, I want to kind of turn here to Josh for a little bit. And Josh, two things. First of all, can you give us some background for the people who might not be aware about the council in PA as an affiliate council, what you do, what your primary focus is, and then, kind of how you've also moved into the military and veteran space and then ultimately to this coalition?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. And Samantha, thank you as well for all of your hard work and efforts into every component of putting this coalition together and just making our lives so much easier in terms of reaching out to folks that we just have not had the opportunity to meet with before. And a big part of what we do at the council is just that, is trying to connect with folks that we don't always necessarily have the ability to know or to meet, and then just to share as much information as possible with them so that they can then take it to the folks that they're working with. And it's kind of that trickle down effect where we just hope that by sharing information and by putting it in front of people, it'll plant a seed. That's a lot of the work that we do at the council. Dave mentioned we're an affiliate council. We are a part of a much larger national organization. So we're the Pennsylvania state affiliate of the National Council on Problem Gambling. And basically what we serve as is a statewide advocacy and resource group. So we do a lot of work in Harrisburg. We do a lot of work all across the state. We work with county groups. We work with state departments. We try to provide as much education and outreach as possible. But we also try to connect folks with help. And a lot of the ways that we do this is through different types of helpline services. So the 1-800-GAMBLER number, which hopefully most of the folks listening today know that number.
Are you feeling like nobody understands what you're dealing with? If you're struggling with a gambling addiction or feel like you might be, this app could change everything. eVive is an app that meets you where you're at in your gambling journey. Whether you're just starting with gambling, you're feeling like it's becoming a problem, or you're ready to leave it behind. This app provides insights and resources for every step in the journey to help you define and understand your gambling habits. There's help and hope available, and eVive is a great place to start the journey. Check them out today and redefine your relationship with gambling. Only available in certain locations.
What that serves as is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week link to help. And if somebody calls that number, or on our website, which is pacouncil.com, we also have a chat and text option available. If somebody reaches out through any one of those avenues to the Helpline Center, they're going to receive assistance, and not counseling assistance, so to speak, but they're going to receive resources. They'll be put in touch with local counselors or counselors that are available virtually. They'll be put in touch with things like meetings and recovery groups and different ways that they might connect with other folks who share lived experiences or similar backgrounds. And then there's a number of different tools. Like Samantha mentioned, there's a wealth of resources out there. We try to collect everything that's out there that exists and place it in one place. And that's our website. Again, the more that we can put in front of people, we have 13 million people in Pennsylvania, and each one of them has a different personality, a different preference on how they might approach getting help or addressing a problem that they may be exhibiting. And we want to make sure that we have as many options as possible. So what may work for one person, it might not work for another. So that's why we want to always make sure that we have those options. Collectively, with all of the new forms of gambling and all of the old forms of gambling that we have available here in Pennsylvania, we have seen a significant number of people, unfortunately, starting to experience issues. That's where we want to make sure that these steps are in place to help connect people in distress with appropriate and effective resources, and then at the same time prevent new problems from starting. And obviously, one of the populations that we've been working with over the course of the past few years with a much sharper focus would be the overall military community, with service members and veterans, and then the affected others that we see in so many situations. And by having a group like the coalition, what we're able to do, like Samantha mentioned, is we're able to just raise awareness about some of these issues that exist and how people can access help. And we're able to do it by disseminating that information throughout the state with the help of all of the members of the coalition. Since it started, we've issued hundreds and hundreds of different types of rack cards and pamphlets just all across the state that are now at exhibit tables and at health fairs and resource and community centers. There's no better way to increase this type of resource than through a grassroots community effort, I believe. And I think that when we see this type of initiative taking place and really starting to grow, the consistency that we're going to see folks getting the help that they need is only going to increase as well.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And the more that we can expand out and increase education and awareness, the better we try to hopefully stay ahead of it, if not catch up to it, if you will. Kind of bouncing off that just for a second, Josh, and you kind of have your finger on the pulse of what gambling has done over the last several years here in Pennsylvania, right? I want to kind of lean that into the military community, and I'm going to pick Fort Indian Town Gap, which is our big military base here in Pennsylvania, right? For years and years and years, if there was a gambling issue, probably the biggest thing you dealt with there was either the casino, which is right down the road from the military base, or a lottery issue, right? Since 2018, and since the Supreme Court went out to states and said, okay, you decide whether you can legalize online gambling, whether you can legalize sports betting, statewide, and I've heard you mention this about the increase in the number of helpline calls and the things that are happening since those things have taken place. Do you see that same increase on, say, a military installation or military members, service members throughout the state? I mean, one of the biggest things we used to talk about in the military community and gambling was the overseas slot machines. Well, they've almost become an afterthought given the explosion of sports betting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more accessibility and availability, whether it be on a military base or anywhere in the state, the accessibility factor has just absolutely skyrocketed, right? I mean, now you've got 17 casinos with an 18th on the way at some point in the next couple of years. But they're kind of concentrated in certain areas. There's a lot of areas of the state where there's very little or no direct brick and mortar type of establishment. And sure, you have corner stores with lottery tickets, and you've got a number of different types of regulated and unregulated forms of gambling. To have accessibility on a small device that you can put in your pocket anywhere within the state borders, you can access that type of game. There is a concern there. And I think what we're seeing is a direct result of that becoming available in such a wide array. You don't need to go somewhere to be able to sit down in front of a slot machine. You don't need to go somewhere to place a bet on a sporting event. All you need to do is reach into your pocket, and you can be in a casino or a sports betting parlor or wherever it is that your preference is within a moment's notice. And I think when we see things increase in terms of ease of access and the availability of continued frequent play, that's where the faster and more continued that we often see folks participate in these types of activities, it really does potentially turn into an issue.
Yeah, 100% agree. So I'm going to kind of flip it back to you, Samantha, just for a second. First question is I'm going to set this one up with this question at first. Since you've kind of jumped into this coalition and moved over here and built this thing, have there been any aha moments? Have there been any things that you've learned that you went, wow, I just wasn't aware of that? And can you talk about that?
Oh, yeah. I had no idea there were so many forms of gambling, as Josh just said, regulated and unregulated. I personally am kind of a cheap person. I don't do those things because I really like to hold on to the money that I've earned. I don't even play the lottery, as bad as that sounds. I'm not supporting our older Pennsylvanians, but so it just really was mind-blowing to me, the number of forms of gambling. And I know during, I think it was our second coalition meeting, we had you guys go kind of a deep dive into the stats around the military and military affiliated population and the statistics that you brought out regarding those individuals who have military service or, active duty or veteran status in their identity, if you will, the increased likelihood of suicide ideation and self-harm. It blew my mind. It really, and I know it was shocking for a lot of the other people on the meeting that quarter. who work more within the military world, the military space, less so in the gambling space or the addiction space. There were several of us that afterwards were chit chatting. Several members, people that I work with often, and were just saying like it was mind boggling and very concerning. Part of what we often do in the work that we do is we hear from advocates all the time of, again, veterans. We'll just go with veterans instead of saying service members, veterans, and families all the time, but we know we're being inclusive of that whole group. Advocates and professionals who are working with veterans who are coming to them with this issue, we'll just say the issue is X, and as they're starting to dig deeper into what is concerning that veteran, they start to uncover it's like the iceberg of all of these things below the surface. They're not presenting with that issue. Something else made them reach out for help. All the things going on in life. Part of what the people that I work with, part of what we do is try to find resources to address those things. Many times they're financially based, a lack of income or an unexpected expense that really hit them hard and really did a number to their savings or their budgeting. And gambling may seem like a simple and kind of quick solution to resolve that issue. And maybe if it's a successful gambling endeavor, well, now we have the money to rectify that. But as any human being knows, when we've done something and we win, that becomes kind of, oh, maybe I could do it again and have the same result. So we do hear often that there's financial issues, and it's so nice now to know that we have a very good connection to the two of you, and that all the other advocates that we work with have a good connection to the two of you through this coalition. So that way, when under the surface, the thing that is going on is a gambling addiction, that we now have a place where we can directly connect that individual to, and they can have hope that there is support and there is a way to work through this. Because again, that statistic that you shared regarding veterans who have a history of problem gambling and who have had a suicidal ideation or suicidal attempt, which is very concerning.
Yeah, and kind of to dig deeper into that specific statistic, 40% of veterans who present for a gambling addiction have reported at least one suicide attempt. That's a compelling number, and it's a high number. And the fact that you're out there and this coalition is out there making resources available and hope available is huge. I mean, it's a giant thing to do. I have a question for you, though. Can we take this? Do you think we can take what we're doing now with putting the resources out there, making the resources available? Do you think we'll reach a point with the coalition where we can start actually talking within the military community and raising awareness about the fact that A, this is an addiction, and that B, there is treatment available? Do you think that this coalition, that's something we can start to move on as we move down the road and get stronger?
Yes. Yeah. I think the members that make up the coalition, I think they have the connection points that would give you the access and the ability to do that. I do think
That's
so.
great.
Because like you said, it's the education, it's the acknowledging the elephant in the room that this is an addiction, and it's an addiction for a reason. It has serious effects on the brain and our psyche, and that is something that everybody needs to hear. But because of the membership of this coalition, I do think that's possible. You had said earlier that I facilitate the coalition. I am not a veteran myself. I do not have any military service in my background. So first off, thank you to those of, to Dave and to anybody listening. Your service means something. No matter where you served, how long you served, what you did, it means something. And it means something very deeply to me. And on behalf of me and my family, I say thank you. I don't bring that experience to this. What I bring is the ability to send out emails and organize people and chit chat and kind of keep people on topic. That's my gift, I guess, to this whole thing. I can keep people on topic and run a meeting. But beyond that, I don't really bring to it any experience with gambling or truly any military service experience, and what all of you lived and experienced, and how the transition back to civilian life. I'm happy to be a part of this in terms of being able to enable the conversations to be taking place.
And let me tell you something. Since the very first meeting that you put together and facilitated, it was very obvious early on that this was going to be a very targeted, very action-oriented group, right? Like there was no doubt in my mind, and Josh and I even talked about this afterwards, like she means business. And as a military veteran, to me, that means the world because we have a mission, right? You're on a mission. Take away, so what? You don't have military experience. So what? You don't have all the gambling experience. What you have is number one, a willingness to learn, right? But number two, a targeted, very pointed, very directed focus on how we get things done. And each time that I've sat in one of these coalition meetings, it's been very obvious to me that we are going to get things done with this thing because you're just not messing around. So, as a service member, as somebody who's in recovery as a service member, I'm truly grateful for what you're doing. So please don't stop. I wish that my command had known more about the addiction because I may have been given a chance to choose something different. And I'm not blaming the gambling. I'm not blaming the Army, but I am saying that I didn't even know what I didn't know back then. I knew I had a problem. I knew I struggled with gambling. I didn't know it was a disease and I didn't know it was treatable. So I thought nobody could ever possibly understand me. And with me, it was treated as a financial problem and as a disciplinary issue and not as a mental health issue and an addiction. And I just think the more we can move the needle in that direction, I literally think you'll see people start to come out of the woodwork and say, yes, I struggle with this. Please help me. I didn't even know it was an addiction. So, again, your passion and your willingness to learn all this has been so huge in moving us in that direction. Josh, I want to ask you something real quick. How do we connect everything that Samantha just brought up, the need for education, the need for raising awareness, the need for connection to resources, as the PA Council and as kind of the guiding, force in the Commonwealth for this exact thing, for resources, awareness, and all that? How do we link the PA Council to be able to provide exactly what we were just talking about, that sort of education, that sort of, resource connection?
Yeah, it's the important piece there, right? We've got the foundation is laid or being laid, right? It's as far as having a wide network of folks. And I think this is one of those classic examples of it's not only what you know, but who you know and how you can connect those pieces and be part of a much larger solution. None of us can do this by ourselves, right? And kind of going back to what Samantha was saying, there's going to be pieces that you bring to the puzzle that's going to help work us towards that greater solution. And I think that's the important part, is not to look at what you don't have, but what you do have, and how we can all bring that together to be a nice, unified, well-oiled machine. And I think that's where we come in to the group like this and to other groups that we may be working with, and bring that education piece, because we can do basically whatever is needed in terms of developing content or developing trainings or putting the message out there, so to speak, that we can put people in a position where maybe we're providing them not just resources, but giving them tools and ideas for them to go out into their communities and into their offices and agencies, and not to forget to go home and talk about it with their friends and their loved ones, and just continuing spreading this message that there is legitimate concerns with folks who are experiencing issues, that it truly is an addiction, that it rarely happens in isolation. We don't see a lot of folks who just have a gambling problem, right? There's a lot of pathways that lead to or lead from the development of a gambling issue. And a lot of times, just like you just said, Dave, a lot of times they do have to do with mental health issues and other addictions, substance related. It can happen in so many different ways. And that's the concern, is that if somebody is struggling and doesn't know where to turn, they're in such a vulnerable position to begin with, that level of hopelessness and despair and frustration is just going to reach an absolute, just almost an unattainable and unspeakable level. By bringing the temperature down and by planting these seeds and letting people know that there is help out there, we can talk about how to access that help. We do a lot of workshops where the whole conversation of tearing down silos, so to speak, is kind of the approach. And Dave, you and I, we've been in positions before where we've heard people talk about the fact that silos are not necessarily a bad thing, because it allows for different areas of expertise and areas of very, very elevated levels of focus to develop. and to grow. But what's important is not to stay in that silo, to help build bridges between silos so that if somebody's struggling, if somebody comes into my practice or my office or my agency or wherever it might be and is experiencing an issue and talking about it to me, and I don't have the resources to help them myself, well, I better know somebody that I can turn to so that it becomes a very fluid process. Oh, you're struggling with a gambling addiction. I don't counsel for that. I don't have a network that I work with here that offers those services, but I do have access to several others, and I can put you in touch with them very quickly. So just having that continued level of increased conversation, I think, is so important. And that's where, as we continue moving forward with the coalition, our hope is that it does continue to grow and we can start having maybe train the trainer programs where we have different types of initiatives that are going to prepare folks to go out into the community, not just with a handful of papers, right, or brochures, but actually be able to speak about it and actually be able to talk about it and have maybe questions or screens or different types of assessments that they can share with folks that they're talking with, and then directly connect them with help that might be virtual or in person in their area or whatever the case might be. And again, it's all about just continuing to grow this initiative and plant those seeds out in the community so that this concept of problem gambling isn't taboo or embarrassing or something that people are hiding. Because, we have to remember the physical symptoms associated with this they're typically minimal. It's usually behaviorally and emotionally related. And when we have situations like that, it can be very difficult for family members and friends and sometimes even the individual to detect within themselves that there's a problem, that something's changing. So the more that we can kind of bring that temperature down again, I think we can do a lot in terms of really progressing the whole field.
Yeah, and that's great. And you actually you actually answered my next question, which was going to be for both of you. So now I'm going to turn the question to Samantha, which is, okay, we come back here 1 year from today and we do this exact same thing all over again. We get together, we start talking about the coalition. What do you hope to see that's added to, different, whatever, between right now and 1 year from now if we were to get back together? What's your vision?
A couple things. I've always been one to say that the size of a group doesn't matter. It's really the passion within the group. But there are a lot of professionals and advocates and individuals with lived experience who are not yet at the table. So I do hope that the membership of the coalition grows and continues to be representative of, all of the parts of the Commonwealth, as well as providers both within the veteran-centric sphere, so those organizations and entities that are only serving veterans or military-affiliated populations, as well as mainstream groups who do have veterans walk in their doors day in and day out and may not realize it, but they're serving them or their family members. So I do hope that membership grows, and it's an open invitation. If you live or work in Pennsylvania and you have a heart for our service members, veterans, and families, and you care about their well-being and their successful transition back to civilian life, join us. There's no membership fees. There's no membership agreements. We're not going to kick you off the island if we only see you once a year or once every couple of years or something. We're really an informal group. So that's one thing. The other thing that I hope I can see is one, what you had asked a little bit earlier about, how can we get the education and the information and breaking down this stigma and the myths of what is this thing going on with me? Okay, well, it is an addiction. Get that out into, the hands and ears of people that need to hear it, that really are frontline. The other would be, I don't know if it's feasible or not. I'm not really sure what the council's been trying to do around it, but I walk out my back door and I walk to the gas station a block over and there's a slot machine in it, but there's nothing near it that says, do you have a problem with gambling too much or whatever the proper language is for it. Like how you can't go to a gas station anymore. That used to be a safe space. That used to be a space where you went, you got food or you got gas, you used the restroom. Now you're going in there to sit there and gamble. How can we get information out into those types of spaces? Because again, we have veterans who are not working with any of the organizations and entities that are a part of this coalition. but they are going to gas stations, they are going to libraries, they are going to what have you, fill in the blank. If they see something that says there is help, or hey, did you know that doing XYZ is a form of gambling and gambling's an addiction, maybe it would, loosen something up with them to reach out for help.
One of the things that I say all the time, because I fell into my addiction in slot rooms and overseas military bases, is had I walked into that room and seen a sign passively sitting on the wall that says, these are some signs and symptoms of a gambling addiction. If you're experiencing these, seek help. I'm not saying I would have stopped doing it. What I'm saying is I would have been given the opportunity to try to make a different choice, and I would have been better educated than I was, right? Even just looking at a sign that says, are you noticing you're showing up more than you used to? Are you noticing you're spending more money than you used to? Are you starting to lie a little bit about what you're doing? Have you borrowed to do that? And if I'd seen some of those things hanging on a wall, I might have looked at them and gone, man, oh, let me think about this. Because I was a non-commissioned officer, I was in a leadership role, and I might have thought, ooh, even if it was, ooh, somebody might catch me, I better stop this, right? And at least would have motivated me to stop doing it and learn more about it. And Josh, I'm just going to throw this to you just for a second to say, my guess is that there are initiatives underway to at least talk about this, right?
There's a few. Yeah. This has been on our radar for quite some time. Unfortunately, a lot of these machines that we're talking about now are currently unregulated. And there's been a lot of different legislative pushes and legal battles and situations over the course of the past several years where there hasn't been much progression in terms of moving the dial in a positive way towards having those signs. I think we're at a point now where we're getting closer to some of these machines potentially being regulated. And if that's the case, that's going to open the door for quite a lot. It's going to open the door for potential requirements in terms of regulations that would have things like that, messaging, age requirements that are enforcement overall, and then hopefully protections and tools and resources for folks that are struggling. The other is that we're reaching out directly to the operators that work with the retailers where these different machines are located. And we're trying to figure out a way that we can help maybe prevent some of these problems from starting, and then obviously address them if and when they do. Having something as simple as a sign that's a direct connection to help, that's a huge step in the right direction. Is it going to fix everything? Of course not, right? Because we have those machines or those signs on billboards and at casinos. But what it's doing again is just creating connectivity, and it's allowing folks who are maybe struggling to at least know that maybe the way I'm doing this isn't as healthy as it could be. Maybe what I'm doing here is a problem. Maybe I should make a phone call. And maybe if that's not today, maybe it'll be next week or in a month or in a year. But at least I have that in front of me. Today, we have no idea how many people are struggling. The only thing that we know is that we get on average about 100 calls a year from folks who say that skill games are my most problematic type of gambling. When you think about it, that's kind of a miracle that 100 people a year are calling us, because how did they find the number? Unless it's positioned right next to a lottery terminal or they just associate it with other forms of gambling, it really is quite remarkable that we're getting that number. But I shudder to think how many other people are out there who are experiencing problems, who have no idea that it's a problem or have no idea where to turn. And that's the concerning piece. So, it's something that is very much on our radar. I wish I could say we have a finalized plan in place or a date that things will start to change. That's not quite there yet. But I would imagine that with some of the new legislative pieces that have been introduced so far this session, we're moving in a direction that is maybe going to put us closer to that.
And I would agree with that, just to some of the stuff that I'm aware of that's moving forward. So thank you, Josh. Thank you for that. And yeah, it's a lot to untangle. It really is a lot to untangle, but we're going to get there. And Josh, you've used this term several times, and I agree with you. It's about planting seeds, right? It's about just dropping seeds here and there and then hoping they grow and helping them to grow as we go along. All right, so we've talked about a lot. We've thrown a lot out here, and it's an amazing coalition. I'm so honored to be a part of this thing. I just want to kind of button this whole thing up. And Josh, I'll start with you first. Any final thoughts, messages, things that you want to put out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think always the primary piece is just letting folks know that if there is any problem that you identify, if you're taking things a little bit further than you wish you were, if you are not sure if maybe the gambling that you're doing has gotten to a point where it could be potentially problematic. And a big important piece there is it does not necessarily mean that you've lost an overwhelming amount of money or that you're in debt, right? It can be a number of different things. If you're just thinking about it while you're not doing it, if you're thinking about it and replacing other activities in your life with gambling, there's a lot of ways that this umbrella term gambling problem or problem gambling can really fit differently into different folks' lives. And if you're curious or if you have, any questions or you'd like more information, the 1-800-GAMBLER number is available for everybody. It's available for folks who know that they have a problem, who are wondering if they do, for family members, for professionals who are working with individuals. It's basically a helpline, but it's also an information line. And between the helpline at 1-800-GAMBLER or our website, pacouncil.com, again, we try to put as many resources in front of folks as possible so that no matter where somebody is in this whole continuum of the development of problems and potentially the entry into recovery, we have information that can be helpful.
Thank you, Josh. Same question, Samantha. Is there any kind of final message you want to put out there?
Just educate yourselves. Go to the council's website. I mean, I had never been on it before, but it is a never-ending wealth of knowledge from the assessments that are up there that people can easily take and start using within their clinical practices, within their intake processes. Educate yourself. And I feel like I would be remiss as a veteran advocate if I didn't also, if it's okay, kind of throw out there for our veterans that, there is help not only for this, but also for other things that veterans may be dealing with, whether it's mental health, whether it's substance use, whether it's a lack of healthcare access, financial struggles. There is help. I would say to those veterans who are listening that if they have never looked into whether they're eligible for any veteran benefits, that they can do that by reaching out to a VA accredited veteran service officer. You don't need to pay somebody to help you look into federal veteran benefits. Here in Pennsylvania, every single county has a veteran office, a county office of Veterans Affairs, staffed with an accredited veteran service officer. There are also some through the Veteran Service Organizations, and there are some through the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. So reaching out, seeing if there's anything they should be filing claims for, seeing about enrolling in VA healthcare. There's so many resources and so much help. And I very often hear, well, I don't deserve it. I only did this, that, or the other thing, or I was only in for 2 years, or somebody needs it more than me. Your service matters. And what you did matters. And those resources are out there to support you. So part of education around this issue also bleeds into veterans educating themselves on all the other resources and supports that are available for them, because it's all one giant connected web. And again, if anybody wants to get involved in the coalition, happy to have you. It's a good group. It's a passionate group. It's a group with a purpose. And I have no doubts that because of the two of you and the other members of the coalition, it'll do some good things over the coming years here in Pennsylvania.
I have no doubt either. And thank you so much for that, Samantha and Josh. And what I want to follow up with is, first of all, 1-800-GAMBLER is good throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and actually is good beyond the borders of Pennsylvania. So if you're listening to this outside of PA, that number is good wherever you are, as long as it's within the United States. Reach out. If you are a veteran, if you're a military service member, if you're anyone who is noticing that your gambling's getting worse, you're noticing that you feel like you have to do it. It's gone from being fun to now you have to do it. You're starting to lie about it. Different things are happening. Understand this. You're not alone. You are not alone. Somebody can understand what you're going through. I remember the days of thinking nobody could understand the wild thoughts going through my head. Guess what? Somebody did, and somebody can. Reach out, whether it's 1-800-GAMBLER. whether it's to your vet center, whether it's to your DMV office, whether it's to the VA itself, no matter what it is, whether it's 988. If you're in a crisis situation, call 988. If you're a veteran, dial 1. You can email me directly, fallinpodcast@gmail.com. I can help direct you to resources as well. It's one of the things I do on this podcast. And just understand, you're not alone. You are not alone. Josh Ercole, Samantha Cossman, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your passion and the work that you do. And I'm looking forward to the continued work with you guys. Thank you so much again. Take care.